It's Sports by the Book at the South Point Studio. Here's Jeff Parles.
Welcome in. It's Sports by the Book here at the South Point Studio. Happy to be with you. I'm Jeff Parles, the best hair in the business. Vinny Magliulo alongside.
Thank you. And it's all mine.
All yours.
That's right.
It's all that matters, right?
That's it. No dye jobs. Earned every one of these Italian blonde streaks.
Of course, of Gone Gaming, the Hall of Famer himself. Fun day yesterday, mostly, right?
Yeah, especially if you were on the other side of the counter in the afternoon. But that's okay.
So let's go.
And, that happens.
Let's get into it real quick for yesterday before we look ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Another primetime game at MetLife Stadium tonight that we'll get to in a second. Giants hosting the Seattle Seahawks. The Seahawks actually have the best record of any NFL team ever on Monday Night Football, but we'll get to that in a second. So yesterday was an interesting NFL day. You wake up with the news that a major starting quarterback is not going to play, and boy, that shifted how things looked in Cleveland yesterday.
Yeah.
Bettor's getting the better on that one, regardless of what number on Baltimore. But throughout the day, Vinny, the afternoon slate, all favorites, and then at night, the dog that the Sharps were on came home, but the public was not on that dog that came.
Sometimes the public outweighs the professionals in terms of the accumulation, right? So you say, well, the teasers really didn't get, but they did. The teasers starting last Thursday with the Lions that did get there, and the money line parlays, right? So again, now did we get some buyback on the Jets late? Yes, and straight bets. Straight bets went to the Jets, but it was not enough to overtake the money line parlays and the teasers. And the afternoon, as you mentioned, all three games went the public's way. And again, that happens sometimes. We had a pretty good morning actually. So it happens that way. And let me just put out there too. Now let's get to it. The fact that because everybody's or a lot of people are up in arms about Patrick Mahomes last night, and he got a phone call from Chris, Jimmy, and Vinny and their colleagues. Let me tell you something. Bottom line, football IQ. Jets are out of timeouts. You get the first down. You stay inbounds. The game is over. Period. End of story. Anything nefarious that anybody thinks about, if you're going to think about that, don't bet. Flat out. I mean, I'm in the business of taking bets, but they're going to keep betting. And some of those situations down the road are going to work for people. And by the way, anybody that bet the Jets to cover, they cashed. So it's not like somebody didn't cash. So anyway, let's just dispel all of that.
I think you said it perfectly. If you're complaining about, first off, there are bad beats in this
always,
the time.
But there are good wins too.
Look, there are bad beats. That does not constitute a bad beat.
No.
Last night.
No.
Even though the Chiefs were up 17-0, that was an even game after the first quarter.
Yeah.
And that was not a bad beat. If Mahomes goes in and scores a touchdown, I'd actually argue it was a bad beat on the other side more so than anything. But regardless, you're 100% right. If you can't, and this is a big thing if you're a bettor out there, you have to be able to handle. You're going to lose. You have to be able to handle your
push
losses
or lose or something. Right. But you're also over the long run. It plays out. I mean, so again, it was a another great betting weekend, and again, there's tie-ins going to tonight. So let's get right to this one where the Seahawks opened last Sunday here, 1.5. And the game got bet down initially towards the Giants, to where the game was pick. And there might have even been some Giants won in some spots, Jeff. But the thought, too, at that point was Saquon Barkley did not play last week in San Francisco. The thought was that he might, but he's not playing. He's out tonight. And since yesterday, it's been, and it came out yesterday that he was doubtful. It's been all about the Seahawks. Back to pick or Seahawks won 1.5. We were at 3 for 2 minutes, by the way. 3, about 45 minutes ago. So did find that buyback threshold, but now sitting at 2.5 and the total 46, which got up as high as 47 from the 45 opener and now sitting at 46 here at South Point.
So Barkley being out is really the big thing.
Yeah.
Here. And
Yeah.
for me, look, Seattle has a laundry list of injuries,
Plenty of injuries
as well.
there as well. Right.
These are two pretty battered teams, especially since it's the first Monday in October. Giants also will be without their left tackle Andrew Thomas yet again, who still has not played for 3 weeks now. You know, it's a tough game for me with the number at it is now, where you had an opportunity to get a point with Seattle, and for almost 3 days, you had an opportunity
early in the week, midweek,
to get a point with Seattle, even at pick. Okay, yeah, you don't miss the best. You missed the best of it, but you know what?
Yeah.
In the grand scheme of things, Vinny, there's not a lot of NFL games that are landing on one to begin with.
Oh.
Even though there are some, you can at least justify it if you missed the one and you took pick. Now, if you have Seattle, now you can't really justify it because you missed it by 3.5.
Well, again, and the game this game is probably going to toggle back and forth between 2.5 and 3. So
Seahawks by 3, right?
No, we don't want Seahawks by 3. You might want the Seahawks by 3, but again, hey, listen. But if it happens, and again, what happens there? Everything at 3 gets refunded, and Seahawk bets at minus 2.5 cash, and so there you have it.
Just looking through this as well for tonight on the total, Vinny. You guys are currently the market low at 46. There's a few others at 46 as well. This is another one where earlier in the week when it looked like Barkley might play, this total got bopped up. 47 was the peak of the market on this. And then since Barkley is, again, doubtful, hasn't been fully ruled out, but he's not going to play.
It doesn't look like
he's not going to play.
Now, by the way, if all of a sudden it gets to game time and you see him out there warming up and he's going to go, you'll see a flurry of Giant money. It'll be the exact opposite. It'll be more like when we posted it last week with the thought that he was going to play, right? Because he had missed the San Francisco game.
Giants also have had 10 days off for this.
Going to have to prepare.
A while to prepare. Seahawks, again, last week got it done. Nice win against Andy Dalton and the Carolina Panthers. Panthers now only one of 2 winless teams in the National Football League, which they joined the Chicago Bears, who are a mess of epic proportions at this point after what they did yesterday, blowing that game to Denver.
And the two differences, right, with those winless teams, we know Carolina is on the rebuild. The Bears, with so many high expectations, right, all summer long, preseason, we saw that, we talked about it, the way they were backed in futures, particularly in the division, regular season wins, yes, to make the playoffs. But the difference is that team, they have been rebuilt. They thought they rebuilt. They got the quarterback when they drafted. It looked like that's who they want. The thing about it is there's disharmony there. There's disunity there. It's an organization. Now people are quitting. You lose a coordinator. You got this Claypool. It's just a distraction at this point. So it's a real shattered locker room, and it's showing on the field.
If there's any positives for the Bears, they have Carolina's first round pick because of the Bryce Young trade. So there is a realistic chance the Bears could pick 1 and 2 in the upcoming NFL draft.
And the question is, are one of those picks a quarterback?
I don't think it's a question.
So
I think it's.
And again, I'm not knocking. I mean, just saying that teams. I've said it for a long time. I think these first and second year quarterbacks are being asked to do so much so soon. You know what? But and teams are not. There's not a big window out there. You either get it done quickly or we're moving on. I have to tell you, it wouldn't be awful for teams and some of the young quarterbacks to get a hold of Baker Mayfield and say, "Hey, listen, what do you think?"
Well, the first flex time game of the entire season just happened during this, and it involves the Bucs, who will now move into a later afternoon window against the Lions in Week 6. So there you go.
Yeah.
That Bucs, one of the bigger surprises through the first 4 weeks, 3-1 in first place in the division.
They have the first, the number one spot in, and a nice rebound yesterday, right after
good win yesterday in New Orleans.
After getting beat up by Philadelphia last Monday night. A good response, and again, it's a response that starts with veterans and Baker Mayfield. Although they did lose Evans yesterday, right?
Yes, Evans left the game with an injury.
Yeah, so we'll have to check his status. You always check the injuries and everything like that. So, I've said it all along. I give credit to Baker Mayfield and what he's done, especially after being bouncing around between multiple teams.
One thing I will say, just finishing up on the Bears, there is one way to jumpstart your rebuild. If you go number 1 overall Caleb Williams and number 2 overall Marvin Harrison Jr., it's a pretty good way to.
That's not a bad one too.
That's a pretty good way to jumpstart your rebuild if you wanted to.
Or continue your rebuild.
Yeah, well, yes, that
right.
Yeah.
Let's face it.
Or
how long have they been rebuilding?
Or rebuild your own rebuild.
Yeah.
You could do that as well.
So
yes, multiple builds in that one. By the way, still 2.5. Seahawks tonight against the New York Giants at MetLife. Giants 1-2, Seahawks 2-1, and again the Seahawks, if they can be 3-1 into the bye week, because there are early byes next week. Tampa's on it, Seattle's in it.
Yeah.
If Seattle gets in at 3-1 to the bye with a Week 1 loss to the Rams, job well done after especially losing that game Week 1.
No question about it. I mean, that was a big surprise too, right? I mean, especially the way the Rams handled them in the second half,
destroyed them.
The domination, really. The injuries tonight, though, for Seattle Bear watching as well, they've had their defensive injuries are pretty significant. So we'll see if maybe the Giants, with a week and a half to prepare, can make some adjustments. I think we'll see a pretty spirited effort out of them tonight.
Just looking ahead to Week 5 real quick, and we will touch some of the bigger games of Week 5 later in the show, Vinny.
Mm-hmm.
Cleveland, L.A. Chargers, big for the Chargers with the injury to Justin Herbert's non-throwing hand yesterday.
Yep.
The Bucs and the Seahawks, those 4 teams on bye in Week 5. Those AFC teams with quarterback injuries. Watson didn't play yesterday. We saw what happened with preseason darling DTR in that game. It was not pretty for the Cleveland Browns. And the Chargers, Justin Herbert needs to be healthy for them to have a shot to be competitive. And they found a way, despite their best effort, to lose that game yesterday.
I've got to tell you, that was when you look at that game, look, they were in control in the second half, and credit the Raiders for their battle, right?
I'll agree.
I think a lot of folks are questioning the play calling, but then again, everybody, right? Every coach gets questioned. There's a lot of Monday morning quarterbacks, and just as many, if not as many, Monday morning bookmakers. Trust me.
Oh, I know for sure. Hey, I'm not a Monday morning quarterback, but.
Are you a Monday morning bookie?
Thank you.
Better?
I don't know. I don't even know, actually. You're just a hindsight 2020 guy, regardless the way you slice it.
Let me tell you about hindsight. It's not 2020. It's X-ray vision.
Oh,
it's Superman. Trust me.
Good. Very good. I can't argue with that, Vinny. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back here on Sports by the Book. Hey, I remember that sport, baseball?
That's right.
We got playoff baseball starting tomorrow. 4 wild card series, all starting tomorrow with prices for the best of 3 wild card series and also some future bets as well to look at when we get back. Sports by the Book here at the South Point studio. Welcome back in at Sports by the Book here at the South Point studio. I'm Jeff Parles. Vinny Magliulo alongside. Happy to be with you as always. All right, Vincenzo, let's get into it. Baseball playoffs begin tomorrow.
Yep.
October 3rd gives us the quartet of wild card playoff game ones. Or is it games 1 or game ones? What is that, Vinny? You're Mr. Grammar over there, right?
I know this. I understood both ways.
Okay.
Yeah.
But regardless.
The first game of each series.
There we go. Let's just do that. Not even worry which word's supposed to be plural. So, just so we go through, this is the second year of this 6-team in each league playoff.
Right.
The 1 and 2 seeds both got buys to the division series. 3 plays 6, which is the non-bye division winning team, which is both Central divisions this year, which it happens to be, as it was a year ago. And then the top wild card in each week will play the second seeded wild card in a best of 3 series. The better team has home field throughout
all three games. It's a best of 3, but if there's a third game necessary, they do not travel.
Correct. It's all in the same spot.
Yeah.
And let's look at these, Vinny, and we'll get to some futures odds as well in the pennant races and the World Series in a second. But let's start on the American League side. This is the biggest mover on the AL side in the way of the price. And that's the Texas Rangers at the Tampa Bay Rays. The Rays got off to this wonderful start. Look like they're going to run away and hide with the AL East. Not so fast, my friend, as the Orioles catch them, win the division. Tampa is stuck in this wild card round for the second straight year. They were swept in the best of 3 in the 2-game series against Cleveland Guardians a year ago. Now they get Texas, another team that looked like they were going to win the division, had the division in their grasp to the final day until those Astros still found a way to win the AL West.
Always finding a way,
all said and done. Vinny, this opened minus 160 on Tampa. Now up to minus 175 on the Rays with plus 155 on the take-back for the series price.
Series price, yes.
For the series price.
Right. So all about the Rays. I think what you want to look at, too, and certainly from our side of the counter, we look at whose pitching staff is really the healthiest, right? And we're going to talk about a pretty big injury that came across probably about less than an hour before we came on the air in another series. By the way, 3 AL East teams in the postseason again. Neither the Yankees or the Red Sox are one of them. How's that for a change? But this Tampa Bay opened $1.60, laid everything up to $1, the present $1.75 here, and in the first game, a little bit lower because these games, everybody's ace or remaining ace is going to go. They've not touched the Rays in game 1 at $1.50, Jeff. Did bet it under a little bit, opened at 8 under, and now sits at 7.5. So I think when you look at this too, the Rangers, we know their pitching's been devastated. The DeGrom injury happened early. They went out at the trade deadline, made the big splash, the big move to get Max Scherzer. He was not good for them, and now there's talk about him coming out of the bullpen. I guess if he's healthy, I personally think we're going to see Max Scherzer in some capacity here, if he's able to go. But right now, it's certainly more about the Rays, and I think it's because, frankly, their pitching staff's healthier. And you wonder about the Rangers' psyche after leading that division for so long.
Well, it also looked like for a time there that the Rangers may just fall out completely. They at least were able to get that win.
They did hang on. Yeah.
Get that win on Saturday night and slam the door shut on the Seattle Mariners, who were charging hard and then did not have a good month of September to close things out.
By the way, the Rangers did get some. Let's talk about the World Series futures a little bit too. They were 80-1 when we put the futures up a year ago.
They are the longest shot that made the postseason this year.
They are, and now they're currently 18. A little bit of exposure there, but that's not really to be. Shouldn't be surprised simply because of the fact that they were so high. So something to keep. Yeah, that a lot of folks ask about. The futures and how they've come into play here.
I have no real feel for this series. The one thing that makes these best of 3 series so hard to bet is just the random element of playoff baseball to begin with. And now it's a 3-game sample size as opposed to a 5-game,
right?
Which is already still really random.
Which may help, by the way, excuse me for interrupting, but it may help a team with some pitching injuries.
It could.
Right?
Could, possibly.
Over the course, best of 5 or best of 7, certainly, you could set your pitching up a lot better, really, in some cases. But maybe with the best of 3, it's not as pronounced.
Yeah,
may help some teams with some pitching injuries.
I have no feel. I have no feel for this. The Rays usually do find a way to do it when they're the better team, except for 2 years ago when they had the best team in baseball and found a way to lose in the division series to the Red Sox. I still don't know how that Red Sox team 2 years ago was even in the playoffs. They weren't any good and almost made the World Series.
Found a way, and they almost got to
almost got to the World Series. But the way Texas has played the last 6 weeks, even though they're a different team with Young back because he got hurt, that's when things really went sideways for them. And then they came back and they played at a pretty similar pace to what they were playing at before he got injured. So
that's one thing about them. And too, in a best of three, Jeff, is this team's been resilient, right? I mean, they've had ups and downs, and they have found a way to get here. And again, credit. Now the last thing is didn't they have like a 3-game lead and with about a week and a half to go?
Yeah, it was 3.
Right.
3,
so,
and they did blow it.
And so you wonder how that comes into their psyche. It could go either way. They have overcome all season long, but that's a tough blow to have a 3-game division lead and be overtaken with a 3-game division lead with less than 2 weeks to go in the season. By the way, that game 12.
That's the early one.
Oh, love it. Love the fact that there's and the way they're positioned. Nice. 12. Well, a little after
12, 138, 4, 5.
Nice.
Not bad.
Great.
If there was a more West team, they probably would have had a 6. But no problem with the scheduling tomorrow. And it'll be a similar schedule on Wednesday as well.
Yeah.
So that's the early game for Tuesday, 3:08 Eastern, 12:08 Pacific for Tampa and Texas. Minnesota, Toronto we'll go there next. We'll keep it in the American League, Vinny. This is also the second game on the card for Tuesday. This series virtual flip for game 1 right now, Vinny. Which, by the way, one other thing I do want to bring up: the dime line. The dime line here.
I was gonna, the dime line here at the South Point. So we mentioned it, and we'll go to this game here. With the Twins, minus 106 in the game. Minus 104 for the Jays. It's a 10-cent straddle, and that straddle goes higher. We don't get to a 15-cent straddle. Which, and again, the straddle being the difference between the two. So you see only a dime line there. We keep that straddle tight all the way up to right around $1.85, $1.90. So that's again, you're going to get the best price on both teams at any given time because that straddle is so tight, Jeff. So dime line remains here at the South Point as it's been all season long.
It's the best way to bet it.
With baseball, if you're betting into a 15 or 20 cent line, you're giving up money on either side.
100%.
So you're either paying more or taking less. So the total on this game 7.5, a little shade to the under at $1.20. You mentioned the series price. We had the Twins at 6-5, minus 120 for you dice shooters out there. Now the Jays are a slight favorite at minus 15 cents for the series. So Jays money has shown. In terms of the futures for the World Series, a year ago the Twins were 40-1, and that was predicated on them also being the favorite for the division.
Right.
So you have to take that into account. They're 18-1 right now going into the postseason, which that may continue to attract some folks at some point. But and you mentioned the Rays 20-1 and now 12-1.
Looking at that Twins and Blue Jays series price, Vinny, this is a favorite flip from what you guys opened at now.
Yeah.
You opened Minnesota slight favorite, minus 120, even on Toronto. Now
that's a 20-cent straddle.
Yeah, that's right.
On the series price.
Right. And
still fair.
Minus 115 on the Jays now, minus 105 on the takeback for the Twins. The Minnesota Twins have lost 18 consecutive playoff games.
Right, mostly to the Yankees, right?
Yes, the Yankees destroyed them.
Who are no longer participating.
Who are not in the last time they won a playoff game was October 5 of 2004. It's been a while.
Yeah.
It's been a while since Minnesota's won a playoff game. I think the streak ends. The streak will end in this series, and I don't even think it will end just one time. I think they will win this series.
You like them to beat the
I do. I don't trust Toronto's. It's just so weird to say with the way that the Blue Jays were built. The Toronto offense is not trustworthy. It has been all over the map this year. They've been bad
Very
with runners,
inconsistent.
bad with runners in scoring position, and they've also been poor away from Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
So, would it shock me if Minnesota finds a way to blow this series? No, because the past history, and we're talking about a team that, Vinny, for American League power ratings for the 6 teams in the field, Minnesota probably still is last of the 6. Correct?
Yeah, in the American League of the American League playoff teams, they're definitely. But you know what? I'm glad you brought up the history and things like that. Let's remember this though. You have to pay attention to this year, and teams change so much. And
it's a very different team now.
Those players are gone. And again, I mentioned it. The Yankees. By the way, the Yankees were the ones that victimized them for so many of those losses. Well, they're not even in the playoffs. So a lot of times people say, and we see it cited quite a bit about, well, if you go back and over history and this and over time, these are completely different teams. Pay attention to who comprises the teams now. Who makes up these teams now? And if to your point, it's a value play. It's 105 is kind of cheap. Maybe you'll get even money on the series price before first pitch tomorrow.
Let's go to the NL side, Vinny. Let's start with the one with the big injury news that came out earlier today. The Brewers and the Diamondbacks. Brew Crew, big favorites in Game 1. Corbin Burns was always going to start that game anyway for Milwaukee.
Yeah.
But now the series price, the Brewers opened minus 200 here, so you're laying 2-1.
Got as high as 210, by the way, initially.
Yeah, it's now come back because Brandon Woodruff, who came off the IL and was great for a month, is now out of this series. He re-injured himself in his final start of the year against Miami. The series price, and properly so, is dipped back down. Minus 175 on the Brew Crew now, plus 155 on Arizona on the take back for the best of 3 series price.
You and I were chatting off air about the prices and series and prices and game prices. Obviously, I started with let's look at the pitching staff. You have to break down the pitch. Whose pitching staffs are the healthiest? And in the National League, I have to tell you, it was Milwaukee's. Right? The Dodgers have injuries. We know that the Braves have injuries. You look up and down, the Diamondbacks, you could make a case that Diamondbacks now probably on equal footing, if you will, with the Brewers. Miami's pitching is good, but from top to bottom, and you look at the way the Brewers have played this last 6 weeks, they've been terrific.
Yes, they have.
They were in second place about 6 weeks ago when the Reds got hot, and then they beat the Reds head-to-head and basically ended their run.
That streak after that series after the All-Star break basically flipped everything for good.
And they beat the Reds in Milwaukee. They beat the Reds in Cincinnati in close game, and then they ran. And then they took care of business against the Cubs, who were in the postseason up until just a few days ago. So it certainly bears watching. Woodruff is definitely out for this series. He may be done for the whole postseason. So it's a big blow for the Brewers.
It is, I don't want to call it a devastating blow, but it's pretty darn close because that 1-2, you could have lined them up against anyone in the entire postseason. Forget just the NL.
No doubt.
The entire postseason said, all right, we got these guys for a best of 3. We have them game 1 and 2. Great. Let's just win that and get out.
Right.
And then a best of 5. We still have them for 2 starts, even with having to play this wild card series. And then guess what? We have them 4 times out of 7 the rest of the way. They were a dangerous team to me now with Woodruff out, especially if it's an extended period of time. Yeah. I just don't see it. I don't think they're good enough to win a wild card series and then follow it up with the traditional path without Woodruff there.
Well, I think, and then they get, I think they get the Dodgers, right? If they get
the winner of the series gets LA.
But speaking of pitching, but the Dodgers always seem to find pitching too.
It doesn't matter what their roster looks like.
It's just amazing for decades. By the way, the Brewers at 18-1, and without the injury, that's for the World Series. They would have been lower, I think. because I think they were alive at least to get there, right? Oh, for sure. And I mentioned the Twins, 18-1 as well. So, I'm sorry. The Diamondbacks, the long shot at 40-1.
Going to the series that I think is the biggest mismatch, and the price indicates that as well. Best of 3 series in Philadelphia starting tomorrow night, 8:08 Eastern Time at Citizens Bank Park.
Mm-hmm.
Miami, Philly. Miami is the worst run differential ever for a Major League Baseball playoff team going into a postseason.
Including the 73 Mets?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Worst one ever. And you and I were talking about this beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
Lowest power rated team in the postseason.
Of the participants.
Participants, the 12.
But give them credit.
Look, they won their close games. They're here.
They did
That's
what
all
they
that
had
matters.
to do the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Nobody was talking about them, right?
Yeah, they're here. That's all that matters. But this is a big uphill battle for a Phillies team that last year was in this circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
Went to St. Louis, swept the series, then took on Atlanta, which Atlanta they had just had one of the best 100-game stretches in league history, and they took the Braves out.
I think the bye hurt the Braves.
No, it definitely did. It cooled them off.
And for sure.
For the Phillies here, they're minus 210. This price hasn't moved, Vinny.
No, it's
minus 210 on the Phillies, plus 180 on Miami. Unless if Wheeler and Nola blow up here for Philadelphia, I have a hard time seeing Miami being able to take one of these first 2 games, even though Jesus Luzardo, who's going tomorrow, has been great the last 6 weeks.
I will tell you, they've got a couple of good arms there. So, and you always want the arms, right, in the postseason. But to your point, Jeff, I think what else helps the Phillies, you mentioned a year ago, they got to the World Series here. They know, I think, that they've got that, even though it's short, historically, they have that pedigree. I think they've played extremely well too. They were up and down for so much of the season, and everybody was still talking about the Mets were going to turn it around, which never happened. Nobody was really was talking about the Phillies. And of course, the Braves ran away with the division, but the Phillies, there's a reason they're the fighting Phils, and they earned it, man. And I've got to tell you, they're going to be a dangerous team, I think, in this postseason, given the fact they can hit a couple of good starters that are steady, well managed, and the fact that they were there a year ago. I think it helps them.
For Philadelphia, they're 14-1 to win it all right now.
Yes, we've got them at 14.
14-1 to win it all. You have them at 5-1 to win the National League.
Mm-hmm.
I know there will be people that say the rollover is better when you do the futures, and it just always, it's just not how people would normally bet. Rather, you're just going to sit there, just take your future, and go from there.
Exactly.
The Phillies are dangerous, and they match up very well with the Braves.
Mm-hmm.
Look, if you have Braves future tickets, and if you got it on it early, good job, because those numbers were gone very quickly with how quick of a start Atlanta got off to.
Well,
you want to see Miami pull this upset and get Philly the heck out of there.
Well, yeah, because we had opened the Braves 8, and that was all because of the hype of the Mets too, and any interest in the betting on the Mets. Yeah. Let's face it. So, and everybody thought nobody bailed on the Braves, but everybody was like, can they, isn't it time for the Mets, with the highest payroll and everything? But yeah, if you got a Braves ticket at 8-1, hey, good for you. And Phillies, by the way, open at 16, so they've kind of been consistent with it.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, I wanted to point out, Chris Andrews, director here at South Point, we were chatting a little bit earlier about exposure. Some exposure I mentioned on the Rangers, a little bit on the Twins too, but overall, nothing really crazy in terms of futures. No real, Golden Knights inaugural season going to the Stanley Cup Finals at the 500-1 or better exposure here. Pretty good shape.
Will there be, after these wild card series get through, will there be exactas on World Series outcome?
What? That's something that Chrissy's rolled out. Yeah, so we could. Yeah, well, I think they'll exact or the exact result of the World Series. We've done it in the past. I don't see why it won't be this year too.
Hey, as I told you before the show, you don't think of Philadelphia and Baltimore as an I-95 series, but that
conceivable.
It's very conceivable at this point.
Although the Orioles, Batista, their
big
closer,
injury. Yeah.
And I know he's been out for the last
about
month or so.
About a month.
And they have found a way, particularly against the Rays. That's a pretty big injury.
Very much so, and it'll still be hard to get by Houston, assuming that's the opponent in the ALCS, because the Astros, again,
they just find a way to
they found a way to win the AL West, and instead of having to play through this random best of three, they get to rest for a few days, which they're a team I think
which helps them.
They will benefit immensely from some time off.
Yep.
And the fact that last year they came out, handled their business with relative ease in the American League side of the playoffs.
Yep.
They are the one team that the rest definitely helps. So
definitely
it'll be Astros the rightful favorites, by the way, in the American League, even without home field to me, 2-1 right now.
Well, and that's also, and remember they were down a bit. Remember when Texas got off to that great start, when there was still some play on the Astros for the pennant along the way. So, but look, credit them. They're the defending champs, right? So technically, the World Series goes through them. But it's great. This is a great time of year for baseball, and positioned nicely. Again, as we mentioned, the next 2 days, it's all about baseball, right? And the 4 games on both days, from late in the morning, or right around midday, right through the evening, perfectly positioned.
Well, plenty of baseball to talk about through the next few weeks. Of course, we'll have on Thursday's show, I would imagine we'll have at least probably 1 or 2 at a bare minimum of series prices for a division series ready to roll. At that point, definitely by Friday, because all those wild card series will be done.
We'll keep you
on
posted
Thursday.
on that.
When we come back, we will update you on what's going on with Seattle and the Giants. Again, about a little under 2 hours from kick at MetLife, with Big Blue as an underdog right now. And we'll also look at some of the bigger matchups coming up in Week 5 in the NFL and Week 6 in college football, as we'll have about 15 minutes to go when we get back on Sports by the Book here at the South Point Studio. Welcome back in at Sports by the Book here at the South Point Studio. I'm Jeff Parles. Vinny Magliulo alongside. Hair is still looking fantastic.
Thank you, buddy.
Still is.
Thank
Despite whatever Ann says back there, it always looks.
Ann is responsible.
Always responsible.
She takes good care. She makes sure that my hair is in good order.
By the way, shout out to the crew as always. Ann,
Jerry,
Ryan, Sean back there, making sure we're on the air. And
can they hear us?
Somewhat keeping us in line. All right, Vinny, back to tonight. Seahawks, Giants.
Yep.
Total moved up since we talked last.
46.5.
Yeah, the hook is back on.
Mm-hmm.
So we're very close to approaching the high water mark of the week of 47 yet again.
Yeah.
2.5 still on Seattle, laying it at the Giants. Barkley is still doubtful as of this moment. The injury report should be coming out momentarily here, Vinny.
I think so. And again, pay attention to that, especially the actives and the inactives. By the way, the Seattle $1.55 favorite, which is creeping up as well. So just bear that in mind. Money line creeping up, and look, it looks like he's not going to play. And if you retrace the betting on it, right, again, we put up the numbers here at South Point on Sunday night. Chris Andrews releases the NFL on Sunday night. When it was released last Sunday night, because Barkley had missed the San Francisco game, and it was announced that he would be attempting to practice, and he did. He gave it a go during the week. The Giants, they got the initial betting response. Seattle opened as a 1.5-point favorite. They took the 1.5. They took the 1, went down to pick. There were some ones out there on the Giants, and then as news came out at the beginning of the weekend that Barkley was doubtful. Then it started to become all Seattle. And remember, we were as high as 3 for a grand total of 2 minutes, just about an hour and 15 minutes ago. So presently, Seahawks 2.5, total 46.5, which is starting to creep up as well.
Hey, I'm staying out of this. Staying out of
Any
this.
in-game. And again, by the way, folks,
maybe I gotta see. I gotta see.
You're going to be watching the game, right?
Yeah, we're going to be watching the game, of course. So it's a little bit when it's a single window. Obviously, it's easier to keep track of the one game you're watching. Yeah. But if anything, it'd probably be look for an under. But I want to see how Seattle's defense looks too,
which is beat up.
The offensive line beat up for Seattle. It's again at pick. I would have taken the Seahawks. I'm not going to chase a 2.5 or lay a bigger money line than I would have had to earlier in the week. There's no reason. So there's no reason to do that.
Again, you have the opportunity and then if you don't do anything, watch it just to garner some
more info for later in the season
for week 5, right?
Absolutely. That's
even though the Seahawks have a bye next week.
Yeah, we do not see the Seahawks next week. They're on bye along with Tampa, the Chargers, and the Browns. Mm-hmm. Browns definitely needed. Get Deshaun Watson healthy.
So the Chargers.
Chargers needed. Justin Herbert injuring his left middle finger yesterday, finished the game, but was wearing a splint.
Probably the Bucs too with Evans.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see the extent of the Mike Evans injury. Yeah. Tampa plays Detroit out of their bye, so a big spot there right out of the gate. All right, looking ahead to Week 5, Vinny. I want to start in London because this is the first time ever we're going to see a team play back-to-back weeks internationally. Mm-hmm. Jaguars handled their business, comfortably winning and covering with relative ease against the Atlanta Falcons yesterday morning across the pond. Buffalo, what a performance by the Bills yesterday.
Big
just
response.
Absolutely throttling Miami the whole way through, winning by 4 touchdowns. And look, I got to give Buffalo a lot of credit because I had a lot of questions after the way they looked week 1. And all they have done is absolutely annihilated everything in their path the next 3 weeks.
And not just scoring points. Their defense is better. We talked about this too, Jeff. Look, I give the Jets credit for that week 1 victory over the Bills, but that was the Bills. Just an awful performance by them, by Allen in particular. But again, credit to Jets and their defense. A terrific touchdown catch in that game as well. But you've got to give the Bills credit, and we talked about it too yesterday. I mean, I think there was a bit more urgency too. Not that the Dolphins didn't have urgency, and they didn't certainly let down by any means. The Bills just they wouldn't let them get into the game every time. Every time Miami came back, right, and again it was 7-0, and then it was 7-7, right. Miami kept within a touchdown, but it was just the Bills' relentless pressure. Their defense was terrific. It's a better defense this year, a better running game, right? There's a couple. Allen's not the best, their best rusher, thankfully, because he'll be safer that way and healthier. So credit them. Remember this: if the Dolphins won yesterday, it would have been a 3-game swing because of the head-to-head. When it comes down to it. So the Bills with a big response. Now they've got to go over to London. You mentioned the fact that the Jags have been there. They'll be there for over 2 weeks because they played last
adjusted.
week. Yeah. That's an advantage. It's probably why this number is as low as it is at 5. Now, will it go up because of the performance, particularly by the Bills last week? Probably. But the Jags, you know what? They're the only team that plays there every year.
Yeah.
But this is going to be interesting to see how both teams respond. One being there for over 2 weeks, and the other one playing against that same team that's been there for that long a time.
I think if this gets to 6, this is a take on Jacksonville. 6.
Yeah.
And
again, 5's a dead number. Right?
Total, yeah, 5.5. 5.
How often do you see a 5 in the NFL? So 5.5.
You're dead.
It's
number.
the same number.
Yeah.
Kind of letting the bettors decide here to do it, but I think it's a wait and see approach right now.
Yeah. If this thing spikes, it's a Jacksonville for me. It is hard to be that good that many weeks in a row. And Buffalo has been that good 3 straight weeks. And for Jacksonville, that was a necessary win last week where they were awful against Houston, who, by the way, may not be as bad as we thought they were, the Texans, after a pretty dominant victory against Pittsburgh yesterday.
I'll tell you what, the Texans, they play hard. They play
sure
for
do.
Their coach. They and the Cardinals forget this tanking thing too. That's another thing. These are people fighting for their jobs, both as players and as staff, right? Coaches. So when you watch the Texans and you watch the Cardinals, they battle. They compete. You can say, well, doesn't everybody battle? No, there are some teams that are really, they're some of them, frankly, are going through the motions. Whose battle would you want more? Those two teams. Look what's happened. With teams that figured that were thought to be much better. It's like the Bears and the Broncos.
Yeah, the Bears and the Broncos again. What happened in Chicago yesterday was a work of art. It was a work of art, that game.
What kind of art? Abstract art?
Whatever type of art. It was spectacular. The way the Bears blew that game. Broncos, at least on the board with a win. The Bears, one of two winless teams left after yesterday. I brought up Houston. This is a game that has moved, Vinny, with them in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Where there were some places that actually made Houston a favorite for a small period of time. That was gobbled up pretty quickly. But you guys are as low as pick on this game. You're back to Atlanta 1, opening 2.5 last night. But it's been mostly Houston action here in this game.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't get buyback on the Falcons until we went to pick. So they took 2.5, 2, everything all the way down to pick them. So look, two-way, the most two-way game so far. And on here we are on only Monday.
It's fascinating to see here because for Houston, where they're clearly playing hard, we talked about it yesterday and the week before. They're clearly a much better coach team than they've been the last 2 years.
No question.
With now Ryan's in there, clearly knows what he's doing. CJ Stroud is the rookie of the year through the first month. He has been great. He has been great. He was great yesterday. He still hasn't thrown an interception a month into his career, which is pretty darn impressive. And on the Atlanta side, Desmond Ritter's been bad. I mean, genuinely bad through the first month, and it begs the question
Escaped the first two games.
Yeah, they very easily could be 1-3. That Green Bay game, they should have lost. But now if you're Atlanta, I mean, you lose this game, you go to 2-3. The chance for everyone's favorite Taylor Heineke will be very loud after this one, Vinny, if they find a way to lose this game.
He does get those chants, right, wherever he goes. But let's remember this too, that we know that the Texans are rebuilding. Actually, Atlanta is too, Jeff. But it's really going to be interesting, and it'll really, take flight, come the winter. But this draft, this college draft, this NFL draft, there are so many quarterbacks whose names are coming up and who are getting the eyeballs of teams and general managers and coaches. There's going to be a lot of quarterback movement, both by virtue of the draft and certainly by virtue of the trade market.
I want to go to this game, Vinny, in the late window. As we all expected, the Cincinnati Bengals are 1-3. They have the worst offense in the NFL through the first month. Joe Burrow looks completely unhealthy. They were embarrassed yesterday in Nashville, 27-3. And that, in all honesty, the final score doesn't do justice for how lopsided that game was.
It was pretty one-sided.
And they go to Arizona, where the Cardinals first time they don't cover a game yesterday. They lose. They were actually within one score in the second half. And
two dropped balls in the end zone on back-to-back plays at the end of that game.
And San Francisco handled their business. Niners are just the best team in football.
There's no question.
There's no arguing that at this point.
And Christian McCaffrey
has a legit shot as a running back to win the MVP.
I have to tell you, we oftentimes talk about the quarterback, and right, understandably so, as the most impactful player to the number. McCaffrey is probably he's number one other than quarterbacks in terms of impacting the number. I don't think that's going to surprise anybody.
No, it doesn't at all. But,
especially if you have him on your fantasy team.
Yeah, or again, offensive player of the year futures. I think McCaffrey should be in the top 3 right now if you were voting today of the MVP. The only guy who's definitely ahead of him at the moment is Allen, I would say. And
On the Bills.
Yeah.
I mean, after yesterday.
Yeah, I think Allen right now is the front runner through the first month.
Well,
even with that horrible game he had week one.
Voters love QBs. Yeah.
But Vinny, this is a game where if you made this line before the season, Cincinnati's north of a touchdown pretty easily.
Absolutely.
Maybe even double digits if Arizona looked as bad as we thought they were going to. But instead, it moved to 4.5 for a little bit last night when you opened 4. You're down to 3. Not a flat 3 here on Cincinnati.
They're betting the Cardinals here,
and they should be.
I don't disagree with it. Burrow is not 100%, but in terms of health, Jeff. But the entire team is they just look so out of sync. Offensively, and again, I guess it starts with Burrow, right? But it's hard for him to get the ball downfield. No real running game to speak of. Their defense is not playing good at all. And this was a team that, this was a division where it was supposed to be between, it was pretty competitive when you looked at the preseason prices, right? Where it was between the Bengals as a slight favorite, then you had the Ravens and you had the Browns, but they were all pretty close. It was pretty compact. And the Steelers as a long shot got some interest to it, like 8-1, But I've got to tell you this. We're probably going to find out some more things. At some point, you wonder, is Burrow not going to play to try to heal? But he's not been right ever since the season started. And it goes back to the beginning of training camp with that calf.
I know you don't want to tank a season, especially when you have players of the caliber of Burrow and Chase and Mixon and Higgins got hurt yesterday.
There's too much talent.
There's so much
still
talent.
Too many games to be played.
There's so much talent on that offense. But if you're Cincinnati and you lose this game on Sunday to Arizona and you're 1-4, you have to really think long and hard about, okay, even in an AFC that looks to be weaker than expected, at least for one of those wild card slots, is it worth putting our highest priced quarterback in the history of the league out there when we know what happens when calves are aggravated, Vinny?
Yeah.
We know what happens. Can happen, I should say. And an Achilles injury is a lot worse than a calf injury. Is it worth it if you're 1-4 to keep trotting Burrow out there with a calf? Only time will tell on that one. Vinny, before we go, I want one last game because I got to mention it's the game of the week. Sunday night, Dallas, San Francisco hasn't moved yet here at this shop. There are some 3.5s out there. You have Niners 4 at home with a total of 45. Niners 4-0, Dallas 3-1. 2 of the 5 best teams in the league going at it in Santa Clara.
Yep, and 45 on the total. I think you'll see this game. I don't think it'll surprise anybody. It'll be the highest bet game of the day. Of course, not only but in terms of straight bets, but everything going to it. Right, you're going to have parlays, you're going to have teasers, multi-leg bets going with it, starting with Thursday night's Bears and Washington game. So, got to pay attention to the injuries. Niners are probably the healthier team, no question about it. Cowboys are going to have to get healthier, and especially on the offensive line going against that 49er defense. But 4 is the number here. I think there's going to be support for both of these teams. However, I think there'll be more support for the Niners in this one, and we're never at a loss for money on either one of these teams.
This is, to me, a more important game for Dallas than it is San Francisco.
Yeah, just look at the records, right? Yeah,
because you're dealing with, again, Philly's 4-0. They're not the same team as they were last year, but the Eagles are 4-0. They have the Rams this week, a game they'll probably win, and the Jets after that. They're very easily going to be 6-0 before they play Miami in Week 7, which looks like an amazing game on paper. But it'll be fascinating to see I want to see if Dallas is closer to the team we've seen in their 3 victories, if that's what they should be expected to be, or if it's a mix of that team that was flat as heck in their loss to Arizona,
which they were.
But
injury, again, the offensive line, it speaks. Listen, and we've had on our side of the counter in before this, these last couple of years, but there was a time we had to learn very expensive lessons on the importance of the continuity and the depth of offensive lines. Pro bettors were way ahead of us for a long time on that. So you really have to watch the injuries here, especially for the Cowboys.
Absolutely. We got a whole week to get through it,
Yes.
Vinny. We'll be back on Thursday, 3 o'clock Pacific, 6 o'clock Eastern time right here on the stream. Vinny and I will be back. Of course, Friday, the 2-hour Football Friday show as well.
Chris
Andrews will be. Jimmy will come in and claim that I hollered at him when the segment started.
Well, he's
as always.
That's Jimmy.
It's Jimmy.
Treat
He's
him
one of a kind. One of a kind. We'll see you again on Thursday, everyone. He's Vinny Magliulo. I'm Jeff Parles. This has been Sports by the Book here at the South Point Studio. Again, 3 p.m. Pacific time on Thursday for our next show.